The NBA is back, and we now know when the Lakers will have to prepare for free agency and the 2020 NBA draft buy. In addition to an overwhelming vote to resume the 2019-20th season, the NBA has finalized the dates that the Lakers and the league's other 29 teams will participate in the 2020 NBA draft and draft lottery, as well as when free agency will take place, according to two of the league's biggest insiders. We'll need to see how this season resumption attempt in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic goes before starting to count on those 2020-21 training camp and season start dates, but this still gives us a lot of info about what the Lakers will have to prepare for moving forward, and when they'll have to do so by. The draft is not the most significant event on the team's calendar, given their current status as a contender, but it's still important. The team will have its own first-round pick this year, but is sending its second-rounder to the Philadelphia 76ers. That first-round pick will likely fall 29th, if the current standings hold through the Lakers' 8 games when the season resumes in Orlando. Jonathan Givony and Mike Schmitz of ESPN currently project that the Lakers would take Aaron Nesmith, a 6'6" small forward out of Vanderbilt, if that order remains in place, but obviously there are a lot of question marks before then. The bigger date for the Lakers will be free agency, when the team likely hopes it will be coming off of a championship as it attempts to keep Anthony Davis. The league's cap situation, after all the revenue it's lost due to the pandemic, isn't set in stone yet, and could force Davis to make the unexpected choice to opt into the final year of his current contract if the numbers drop far enough that it becomes no longer financially prudent to seek a new deal during this specific offseason. But even if Davis does opt out, as most assumed he would after declining an extension with LA earlier this year, most around the league still think that the Lakers' work to keep him is mostly done. Davis himself previously said he's given zero thought to what he'll do in free agency, and even though there is literally almost no way that is true, it would still be a massive upset, and likely require something going catastrophically wrong in the next few months, for him not to remain a Laker beyond this season. Who the Lakers will target in free agency beyond Davis, and what their cap situation will look like post-pandemic, is still uncertain, but at least now we know when we'll start to get answers on all of those questions and more. The NBA is really close to being back both on the court, and in terms of the off-court madness that makes it a nearly year-round focus of intense interest. Buckle up because the next few months are going to be huge for the Lakers and the league as a whole. Here's who the Lakers will play once the season returns. The Lakers will reportedly play the next 8 games on their schedule. Wednesday, June 10, will mark 3 months since the Los Angeles Lakers played their last game. It was a 104-102 loss to the Brooklyn Nets at Staples Center, following a 2-game stretch where the Lakers beat the Milwaukee Bucks and LA Clippers back-to-back. Their next game will likely be played on July 31, when the NBA is expected to restart its season at Disney's ESPN-wide World of Sports complex in Orlando. While the official schedule won't be released until after the NBA's Board of Governors have voted on Adam Silver's proposal, Vincent Goodwill of Yahoo Sports reported that teams will likely play the next 8 games on their regular season schedule. If that holds true, here are the teams the Lakers will play once the season resumes. Houston Rockets, Denver Nuggets, Utah Jazz, Toronto Raptors, Washington Wizards, Indiana Pacers, Sacramento Kings. There are a few things that should be noted before we continue. The first is that the games against the Washington Wizards and Sacramento Kings are subject to change because their games against the Lakers are later on their schedule, so without changes, the Wizards and Kings would play more than 8 games. That's unlikely to happen. The second is that the Jazz suck, and Anthony Davis deserves to be the Defensive Player of the Year. Now that we have that covered, let's move on. There are a few things that should be noted before we continue. The first is that the games against the Washington Wizards and Sacramento Kings are subject to change because their games against the Lakers are later on their schedule, so without changes, the Wizards and Kings would play more than 8 games. That's unlikely to happen. The second is that the Jazz suck, and Anthony Davis deserves to be the Defensive Player of the Year. Now that we have that covered, let's move on. The Lakers only need to win 3 games to clinch the number 1 seed in the Western Conference because of the 8-game schedule. Of the 7 teams they're expected to play when the season resumes, they've beaten 5 of them at least once. The Raptors and Pacers are the only 2 teams the Lakers haven't beaten this season. Under normal circumstances, the Lakers' stars would get some rest before the start of the postseason, but these regular season games will be crucial to getting everyone back into game shape, and the stars are no exception. Outside of conditioning purposes, these games aren't expected to mean anything for the Lakers. The real draw is the rest of the Western Conference. Of course, there's the potential play-in tournament for the number 8 seed, but there's also a ton of shuffling still to be done for the teams seeded 2 to 7. For example, if the Rockets finish the season strong, the Lakers could play them in the second round, as opposed to the Jazz or Oklahoma City Thunder, both of which are teams they've gone undefeated against this season. Comparatively, Los Angeles is 1-1 against Houston this season. There are still details that need to be ironed out, but one thing's clear, even under unique circumstances, the Lakers' quest for their 17th title in franchise history promises to be exciting. The Lakers' path to Orlando basketball, explained. Pending the approval of the National Basketball Players Association, we now know when the Lakers will be back for training camp, when they'll head to Disney World and how much time they'll have to prep for the NBA season to resume. The NBA Board of Governors' call on Thursday was an eventful one, with the league approving dates to resume the 2019-20 season, as well as when free agency and the draft will take place. One of the other things taken care of on that call, pending approval from the Players Union, of course, is when training camp will begin as teams prepare to come back, when they will travel to Disney World, and more, via Shams Charania of The Athletic. Does that seem kind of far off? There may be a few reasons for that. Let's take a look at them as we chart the Lakers' likely journey to playing again in Orlando. Getting ready to reunite. 26 days between the approval of this plan and when the NBA plans to start camps may seem like a lot, but it's actually kind of a tight window considering everything that has to be done. For one thing, not every player on the Lakers, or other NBA teams, is in the town where their team plays, and this timeline gives the NBA 26 days to gain the approval of the NBPA, and then request players head back to their cities when that is done. Once their players will likely have to quarantine for 14 days within that 26-day window, the standard length of coronavirus travel quarantine around the world, before being able to start official training camps. Most NBA teams, including the Lakers, have reopened their practice facilities at this point, but solely for individual work while players are tested each time in the building and not able to be overseen by their team's head coach. In order to start bringing everyone together for camp, they'll likely all have to do some sort of quarantining and testing first. And that's just the first step as they look to get back to playing. If training camp begins for the Lakers on June 30, that will give them about a week to start shaking the rust off, getting their conditioning back up as a team and learning to play together again before they have to travel to Orlando. That's actually a pretty tight window, but the reason for that is probably because the next step before games requires some time. This part of the process will at least give the team a week to reunite for the first time and do a bit of work in group isolation before moving on to Orlando, though. Does that seem kind of far off? There may be a few reasons for that. Let's take a look at them as we chart the Lakers' likely journey to playing again in Orlando. Training camp. If training camp begins for the Lakers on June 30, that will give them about a week to start shaking the rust off, getting their conditioning back up as a team and learning to play together again before they have to travel to Orlando. That's actually a pretty tight window, but the reason for that is probably because the next step before games requires some time. This part of the process will at least give the team a week to reunite for the first time and do a bit of work in group isolation before moving on to Orlando, though. Even without some of the official finer points, though, it seems likely that in order to preserve the bubble at Disney World that all teams will have to isolate again for another 14 days. It is unclear whether they will be able to practice together at this time, but that seems theoretically possible depending on the steps leading up to that. But if the league wants to be as safe as possible, this period also may see a return to just individualized workouts. Either way, that step will probably take up another 2 weeks before the season resumes. After they complete that part of the plan, the Lakers would still have 10 days to work as a team to get ready for the resumption of play on July 31, give or take a few days if not every team starts the season again on the exact same day. Given that the Lakers only need to win 3 of their 8 games in order to preserve their top seed in the Western Conference, those contests will seemingly mostly function as glorified preseason, tune-up games or training camp scrimmages, on some level. All told, that will be about at least 17 days of working as a team as things stand right now, with the possibility of more depending on how the NBA isolates teams when they arrive in Orlando. But between all this lead time and the ability to use practice facilities again with a firm start date in mind, this plan does seemingly provide something akin to the 4 weeks Jared Dudley and other players said would be necessary to get back and ready for the season. There is still a lot we don't know about this plan, with the health protocols the league will take to keep everyone safe looming as the most significant. It's also somewhat concerning that the league is potentially leaving less than a month between the NBA Finals and when next year's training camps would tentatively start, but that's more of a problem for next season than this one. Still, this is a lot more information than we had a day ago, and a picture of what the Lakers' path back to basketball, and some of the challenges they and other teams will face on their way there, is becoming increasingly clear. Our months-long wait is nearly over. The Lakers are almost back.